For 25 years, I gave everything I had to my daughter Emma. Every early morning, every late night, every dollar I earned went toward giving her opportunities I never had. I worked myself to exhaustion, never complaining, never asking for anything in return. All I wanted was to see her succeed, to see her happy. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. But the day my daughter's fiancé Jason suggested I move out of my own home before their wedding, the mask fell away. The words he spoke that evening shattered my heart into a million pieces. "Sarah, Emma, and I have been talking," Jason said, swirling his wine glass with practiced casualness while we sat. "In my living room, with the wedding only 3 months away, we think it would be best if you found your own place. Somewhere smaller, more age-appropriate. Age-appropriate. At 58, I wasn't exactly ready for a retirement home. I stared at him, trying to process what he was suggesting. My daughter, my Emma, sat beside him, eyes downcast, twisting the expensive engagement ring on her finger. "This is my home," I said simply. "I've lived here for 20 years, and we appreciate everything you've done," Jason continued with that smooth, patronizing tone he reserved for difficult clients at his law firm. "But Emma and I need our own space to start our marriage. This neighborhood is perfect for us. Good. Schools nearby for when we have children, close to both our offices." Emma finally looked up. "Mom, what Jason means is that we want to buy the house from you. We can give you market value, and you could get something more manageable. Maybe that condo development across town? The one with the walking trails and community center?" The condo development. For seniors. I felt something crack inside me, a fissure opening in the foundation of my relationship with my daughter. What Emma and Jason didn't know, what they couldn't possibly have imagined, was that my former employer, Howard Reynolds, had left me far more than just memories of our 15 years working together. His will had been read just 3 days prior, and I was still reeling from the news myself. But standing there in that living room, watching my own daughter's face fill with expectation at the thought of me quietly disappearing into a senior community at their convenience, I made a decision. It was time to stop giving. It was time to finally live for myself. I never planned to work as an executive assistant for Howard Reynolds for 15 years. When I first took the job at Reynolds Financial Advisors, it was supposed to be temporary, just something to keep us afloat after Emma's father walked out, leaving me alone with a 4-year-old daughter and a mountain of debt. But temporary turned into permanent, and before I knew it, a decade and a half had passed. Howard wasn't just my employer. He became a mentor and friend. He saw how hard I worked to provide for Emma, how I skipped lunches to save for her college fund, how I took extra projects on weekends to afford the dance lessons and SAT prep courses she needed. He watched me age at that desk, my hair gradually streaked with silver, my hands growing more weathered with each passing year. "Sarah," he'd tell me, "you're the backbone of this entire operation. I couldn't do any of this without you." I'd smile and brush off the compliment, but those words meant everything to me in a world where I often felt invisible. When Emma graduated from college and landed her first position at a marketing firm in the city, I thought my heart might burst. With pride. I'd done it. I'd given her everything she needed to succeed in life. She met Jason at a charity gala 2 years later. He came from a family with connections. His father was a judge, his mother from old money. He was handsome, ambitious, and from a different world than ours. Part of me had always worried that Emma was attracted not just to Jason, but to the lifestyle he represented, something so different from our modest beginnings. "He's perfect, Mom," Emma had gushed after their 3rd date. "He's taking me to the Carrington Resort next weekend. Can you believe it? The Carrington." I'd smiled and shared her excitement, ignoring the twist in my stomach at the way her eyes shone not with love, but with wonder at access to a world that had always been closed to us. When Howard died, it was sudden. A stroke in his sleep at 68. At the funeral, I stood in the back, my black dress hanging loose on my frame. I'd lost weight from grief. He'd been more than a boss to me. He'd been my rock through so many difficult years. A week later, Melanie Hayes, Howard's attorney, called me into her office. "Sarah," she said, placing her hands flat on the desk. "Between us, I have something important to discuss with you." I nodded, assuming it was about the closure of the firm, perhaps some final paperwork that needed my signature. "Howard left explicit instructions in his will," Melanie continued. "The firm is being sold to Westbrook Financial, and the proceeds from that sale, along with a significant portion of his personal investments, are being transferred to you." I stared at her, uncomprehending. How much?" I finally managed to ask. Melanie slid a document across the desk. I looked down at the number and felt the room spin. $6 million? "He left a letter for you as well," Melanie said, handing me an envelope. With trembling fingers, I opened it and began to read. "My dear Sarah, if you're reading this, I've left this world behind. Don't grieve too much for me. I've lived a good life, a life made better by having you in it. For 15 years, I've watched you sacrifice everything for your daughter. I've seen your dedication, your unwavering love, your selflessness. I've also seen how little time you've had for yourself, how many dreams you've set aside. Consider this my final gesture of appreciation. I want you to live, Sarah. Really live. Take trips, buy beautiful things, pursue passions. Rest. You've earned every penny of this inheritance, not just through your exceptional work at the firm, but through the exceptional human being you've always been." With gratitude and affection, Howard, tears streamed down my face as I finished reading. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into my purse. It was too much to process all at once. "The funds have already been transferred to an account in your name," Melanie explained. "Howard set it up months ago, anticipating this eventuality. You're a wealthy woman, Sarah." I nodded, still dazed. "I need time to think." That evening, I sat alone in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd packed thousands of school lunches, where I'd helped Emma with homework late into the night, where I'd calculated and recalculated our budget month after month to make ends meet. I stared at the banking app on my phone, at the string of zeros that had appeared in my account balance. It didn't seem real. I decided not to tell Emma right away. I wanted to process this change in my circumstances first, to make plans. Besides, with her wedding to Jason approaching, I didn't want to distract from their moment. I'd surprise her. After the honeymoon, tell her I could help with a down payment on a house of their own, set up funds for my future grandchildren. But first, I needed to take a breath. The firm was being sold, and at 58, I'd given enough of my life to work. It was time to retire, to think about what I wanted for once. The opportunity to tell Emma about my plans came sooner than expected. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She and Jason invited me to dinner at his parents' house the following weekend. "Mom, this is important," Emma said over the phone. "Jason's parents want to discuss the wedding plans, and there's something specific we need to talk to you about." That something specific, as it turned out, was my house. The evening started pleasantly enough. Jason's parents' home in Hillcrest Estates was exactly what you'd expect. Expansive, tastefully decorated, subtly communicating their wealth and social standing. Marion Taylor, Jason's mother, greeted me with her usual polite smile and air kiss somewhere in the vicinity of my cheek. "Sarah, so lovely to see you again. That's an interesting blouse." Her eyes flickered over my department store outfit with barely concealed judgment. Richard Taylor, Jason's father, was more direct. "Sarah, come in, come in. Jason tells me you're still working at that financial firm. Admirable dedication in someone your age." In my age, as though 58 were ancient. I smiled tightly and followed them into a dining room where a table had been set with china that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Former salary, I reminded myself. Emma bustled in, beautiful in a dress I knew she couldn't afford on her marketing coordinator's salary. Jason's influence was already evident in her appearance, more polished, more expensive, less the girl I had raised, and more the woman he wanted her to be. "Mom, you're here. Perfect timing. The caterer just delivered the most amazing roast." She hugged me quickly, the scent of unfamiliar perfume clinging to her. Throughout dinner, the conversation revolved around wedding details, the venue at the Carrington Resort, the 5-tier cake, the string quartet for the ceremony. I listened quietly, calculating the cost in my head out of habit, wondering how much debt they were taking on for this extravagance. "Of course we're contributing significantly," Marion announced, glancing my way. "We understand that on a single income, there are limitations to what you can offer, Sarah." Before I could respond, Jason cleared his throat. "Actually, that's something we wanted to discuss tonight." He glanced at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. "Emma and I have been thinking about our future, about where we'll live after the wedding. We've looked at several properties," Emma added, "but nothing feels quite right. Until we realized," Jason continued, placing his hand over Emma's, "that the perfect solution was right in front of us." I knew what was coming before he said it, but it still felt like a punch to the gut when he turned to me with that practiced smile. "Sarah, your house is in an ideal location. The neighborhood has only appreciated in value since you bought it. Emma grew up there, so there's sentimental value. And for you, it must be a burden. The maintenance, the yard work, all that space for just one person." "What Jason is trying to say," Emma jumped in, "is that we'd like to buy your house. We can offer market value, of course. Market value. As though this were a simple business transaction. As though 20 years of memories could be neatly packaged and sold off at the right price." "And where exactly would I go?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Marion set down her wine glass. "There's a lovely new development on the east side, Sunset Gardens. Very nice units, all one level, perfect for someone looking to downsize. I have a friend on the board there. I'm sure she could expedite your application." "It's a retirement community," I said flatly. Jason shrugged. "They prefer active adult living. But yes, it's age restricted. 55 and up. You'd be with peers, Sarah. People at your stage of life. My stage of life. As though my life were winding down while theirs was just beginning. As though I should gracefully exit stage left, making room for their story to unfold in the house I had maintained, the home I had built." "Actually," I said, setting down my fork, "I have some news of my own. I'm retiring." Emma's eyes widened. "Retiring? But Mom, you always said you'd need to work until at least 65. What about health insurance? What about income?" I smiled. "I've worked it all out. It's time for a change." Jason leaned forward, suddenly interested. "That's unexpected. Has there been some development at the firm since Howard's passing?" "You could say that," I replied vaguely. Richard Taylor, ever the judge, studied me with newfound curiosity. "If you're retiring, selling the house makes even more sense financially. You could invest the proceeds, supplement whatever modest retirement you've managed to save." Modest retirement. I almost laughed at the assumption. "I appreciate the concern," I said, "but I won't be selling my house. In fact, I'm planning some renovations, perhaps a new kitchen, and I've always wanted to landscape the backyard properly." The table fell silent. Emma and Jason exchanged glances. "Mom," Emma said slowly, "be realistic. How can you afford renovations? On a fixed income? and maintaining that house alone. Doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense for me, I countered. It's my home, and I intend to stay there. Jason's smile tightened. Sarah, I understand this might be emotionally difficult, but you need to think practically. Emma and I need a place to start our family. The neighborhood has excellent schools, which we'd need soon. The commute is perfect for both of us, and frankly, a house that size is wasted on a single person. Wasted. The word hung in the air between us. Marion nodded vigorously. It's simply practical, Sarah. You could use the money from the sale to secure your future. Living on Social Security alone is so limiting. I took a slow sip of water, gathering my thoughts. I won't be living on Social Security alone. A pension from the firm? Richard asked skeptically. I can't imagine it's substantial. No pension, I said. Something else entirely. Emma frowned. Mom, what are you talking about? If there's something going on with your finances, you should have told me. The concern in her voice wasn't for me, I realized. It was for how my financial situation might impact her plans, her wedding, her future, her desire for my house. I thought about Howard's letter, about his wish for me to finally live for myself after all these years of giving to others. I thought about the years I'd spent in that house, raising Emma alone, making it a home despite our limited means. I thought about the assumptions being made around this table, that at 58, my life was essentially over, that my only value now was in what I could provide to the next generation. Howard left me something in his will, I said finally. I'll be quite comfortable. Jason's posture changed, a subtle shift that I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't spent 2 years observing his reactions to everything from potential clients to wine selections. Left you something? He repeated. What, exactly? I met his gaze directly. That's between Howard and me. Emma placed her hand on Jason's arm, a gesture meant to calm him. Mom, if you've received some kind of inheritance, that's wonderful. But it doesn't change the fact that the house would be perfect for us. Maybe now you could afford something even nicer, a condo downtown with a view, or... I'm not selling my house, I interrupted, my voice firm. Not to you, not to anyone. It's my home and I intend to stay there. Marion's lips pursed in disapproval. Well, I must say, this seems rather selfish, Sarah. Young families need space. Emma is your only child. Wouldn't you want to help her get started properly? Selfish. After 25 years of putting Emma first, of working extra hours and weekends, of foregoing vacations and new clothes and dinner with friends, all to ensure she had every opportunity. Now I was selfish for wanting to keep my own home? I've helped Emma get started in every way I could, I said quietly. I put her through college without a penny of student debt. I supported her when she wanted to take that unpaid internship that led to her current job. I've never asked for anything, in return except respect for my decisions about my own life. Jason's jaw tightened. With all due respect, Sarah, Emma is going to be my wife. Our future, our family's future, should be the priority now. If you've suddenly come into some money, wouldn't you want to use it to help secure your daughter's happiness? I looked at my daughter, this young woman I had raised alone, whom I had loved fiercely and given everything to. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Emma, I said softly, is this what you want? For me to sell you my home and move into a retirement community at 58? She fidgeted with her napkin. It just makes sense, Mom. You'd be comfortable, we'd have the space we need, and you'd have extra money from the sale. Plus, you'd know the house was staying in the family. Family. The word echoed hollowly. In that moment, I realized something fundamental had shifted in our relationship. To Emma, and certainly to Jason, I was no longer the mother who had sacrificed everything. I was a potential resource to be managed, an obstacle to be moved aside. I think I should go, I said, placing my napkin beside my half-eaten meal. "Thank you for dinner." "Sarah, don't be dramatic," Marion chided. "We're just having a practical family discussion." "It's been a long day," I insisted, rising from my chair. "Emma, I'll call you tomorrow." As I reached for my purse, Jason made one last attempt. "At least tell us how much he left you. If it's substantial, maybe we could look at properties in Hillcrest instead. You could help with the down payment. And, good night, Jason," I cut him off, turning toward the door. "Richard, Marion, thank you for your hospitality." I walked out to my 10-year-old sedan, parked conspicuously among the luxury vehicles in their circular driveway. As I drove home, tears blurred my vision, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of clarity, of resolution. For 25 years, I had defined myself solely as Emma's mother, measuring my worth by her success and happiness. I had shrunk myself to expand her world, a sacrifice I had made willingly, lovingly. But somewhere along the way, something essential had been lost. My sense of self beyond motherhood, my right to my own dreams and aspirations. Howard had seen that. In his final gift to me, he hadn't just provided financial security, he had given me permission to reclaim myself. By the time I arrived home, I knew exactly what I was going to do. The following morning, I called Melanie Hayes. "I'd like to make some changes," I told her without preamble. "My lease with the firm expires next month, and I won't be renewing it. I'm ready to retire." "I thought you might be," Melanie said warmly. "Howard would be pleased. He always worried you worked too hard." "There's more," I continued. "I'd like your recommendation for a good interior designer and contractor. It's time my house reflected who I am, not just what I could afford as a single mother." "I know just the person," Melanie replied. "And Sarah? I'm glad you're doing this. Howard wanted you to enjoy your life, not just endure it." Next, I called my friend Diane, whom I rarely saw anymore because I was always working. "Are you still planning that trip to Italy next spring?" I asked. "Sarah, yes, we're going for 3 weeks. Why?" "Save room for one more," I said, smiling into the phone. "I'm coming with you." Finally, I texted Emma. "Need some time to think. Let's talk next week." For the next few days, I immersed myself in plans that had nothing to do with anyone else's needs or expectations. I researched renovation options for my kitchen and master bathroom. I browsed travel websites, bookmarking destinations I had only dreamed of visiting. I made appointments with a financial advisor Melanie recommended to discuss investment strategies for my newfound wealth. In these quiet activities, I discovered something surprising. I barely knew myself anymore. What colors did I prefer? What style of furniture appealed to me? Did I want to learn Italian for my trip? Or would a basic translation app suffice? These simple questions had no ready answers because for so long my preferences had been subordinated to practicality, to what Emma needed, to what we could afford. Now, with Howard's incredible gift, I had the freedom to ask these questions and the resources to explore their answers. It was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. Emma called repeatedly during those days, leaving increasingly urgent messages. I texted brief responses. "I'm fine, just busy and need some space right now," knowing a conversation was inevitable, but wanting to approach it from a position of clarity rather than hurt. A week after the disastrous dinner at the Taylors', my doorbell rang on Saturday morning. I opened it to find Emma standing on my porch, arms crossed, expression a mixture of concern and irritation. "Mom, what's going on? You've been avoiding me for days. Jason and I are worried." I stepped aside to let her in, noticing how she immediately scanned the living room, perhaps looking for signs of what had changed. Nothing had, yet. The renovation plans were still just that, plans. But everything had changed inside me. "I haven't been avoiding you," I said, gesturing for her to sit. I've been thinking. Emma perched on the edge of the sofa. The same sofa where I'd read her bedtime stories, where I'd held her through her first heartbreak, where we'd celebrated her college acceptance letter. Thinking about what? Mom, if this is about the house, we were just making a suggestion. If you're not ready to sell, we can wait. Wait. Not accept my decision. Just postpone their expectations until a more convenient time. I'm not selling the house, Emma. Not now, not later. She frowned. But why? It makes perfect sense. You're here all alone, and Jason and I need— What you need and what I need are different things, I interrupted gently. This is my home. I've spent 20 years making it mine. I raised you here, and now I'm planning to enjoy it fully in my retirement. Emma's eyes widened. You were serious about retiring? Mom, that's so sudden. Are you sure it's financially responsible? I almost laughed at the irony. My daughter, who had never paid a mortgage payment in her life, questioning my financial responsibility. Yes, I'm sure. Howard left me more than something in his will, Emma. He left me a substantial inheritance. She stared at me, processing this information. How substantial? I hesitated, then decided on honesty. $6 million. Emma's mouth fell open. Million? As in millions of dollars? And you didn't tell me? I'm telling you now. She stood abruptly, pacing across the living room. I don't understand. Why wouldn't you share this immediately? This changes everything, Mom. Do you know what we could do with that kind of money? We, not you, we. As though my inheritance was a family resource to be allocated according to Emma and Jason's priorities. I know what I'm going to do with it, I said. I'm going to live the life I've put on hold for 25 years. I'm renovating this house. I'm traveling. I'm exploring interests and hobbies I never had time for, while working 60-hour weeks to put you through college. Emma stopped pacing, her expression shifting from shock to calculation, a look so reminiscent of Jason that it made my heart ache. Of course you should enjoy yourself, Mom. No one's saying otherwise. But surely there's enough to help your only daughter too? Jason and I could use help with a down payment on a house in Hillcrest, something comparable to his parents'. And the wedding costs have been overwhelming. The Carrington is expensive, but Jason says appearances matter in his profession. I studied my daughter, trying to see past the entitled young woman standing before me to the child I had raised with such different values. Where was the girl who had volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend? Who had tutored underprivileged kids during college? Who had once declared she'd rather have experiences than things? Emma, I've already given you everything I had to give for 25 years. My time, my energy, my money, my love. I worked 3 jobs sometimes to make sure you had dance lessons and SAT prep and summer programs, all the things I never had growing up. I did it gladly because I wanted you to have every opportunity. But this inheritance isn't part of that. This is mine. Her face flushed with anger. So that's it? You get millions of dollars and suddenly you're too good to help your own daughter? What happened to family first, Mom? Isn't that what you always taught me? Family first doesn't mean one person always gives while the other always takes, I said softly. It means respecting each other as individuals with our own needs and dreams. Emma picked up her purse, hands shaking slightly. I need to process this. I can't believe you're being so selfish. Jason was right about you all along. The words stung, but I didn't flinch. What exactly was Jason right about? That you resent him, that you're jealous of our lifestyle, of his family's success, that you'd try to hold me back because you can't stand to see me surpass you. I felt as though I'd been slapped. Is that really what you think of me? After everything I've sacrificed to give you a better life than I had? Emma's expression wavered for a moment, uncertainty flickering behind her anger. Then her jaw set stubbornly. "I'm going to go. Jason's waiting for me. We have a meeting with the wedding planner." "Emma," I called as she reached for the door. "I love you. That hasn't changed. But things between us need to change. I won't be taken for granted anymore, not even by you." She paused, hand on the doorknob. "If you change your mind about helping with the house or the wedding, let me know. Otherwise, I guess we'll see you at the ceremony." And with that, she was gone, leaving me alone in the home we had shared for so many years. I sank onto the sofa, emotionally drained but strangely calm. The conversation had gone about as well as I had expected, which is to say, terribly. But beneath the hurt and disappointment, I felt something unexpected: relief. For the first time, in 25 years, I had stood my ground. I had acknowledged my own worth beyond what I could provide for others. Howard would have been proud. That evening, as I sat on my back porch watching the sunset, something I rarely had time to do before, my phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Emma told me about your inheritance. We need to talk about wedding contributions and our future housing." Situation: the Taylor family expects certain standards to be maintained. I stared at the message, marveling at the audacity. No congratulations on my good fortune. No recognition of what this financial security might mean for me after decades of struggle. Just demands, expectations, entitled assumptions about how my money should be allocated to maintain their image. I typed a simple response. "There's nothing to discuss, Jason. My financial decisions are my own." His reply came quickly. "This isn't just about you. Emma deserves better than what you're offering. If you won't help your only daughter have the wedding and home she deserves, what kind of mother are you?" The question lingered on my screen, a blatant attempt at manipulation that might have worked on the woman I was a week ago. The woman who measured her worth by how much she gave to others, who believed that self-sacrifice was the highest form of love. But Howard's gift had given me more than financial freedom. It had given me perspective, the ability to see that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to model self-respect and healthy boundaries. I didn't respond to Jason's text. Instead, I opened my email and confirmed my appointment with the interior designer for the following week. Then I booked myself a yoga class, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for, and reserved a spot on that Italy trip with Diane. As darkness fell over my backyard, I made a silent promise to myself. The remaining years of my life would be lived with intention and joy. I would no longer be defined solely by my role as Emma's mother or by the sacrifices I had made. I would be Sarah Miller, complex, worthy, and finally, gloriously free. For the first time in 25 years, I was putting myself first. And despite the conflict with Emma, despite the emotional turmoil of the past week, I felt more at peace than I had in decades. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Emma might continue to pressure me. Jason would certainly escalate his demands. The wedding would loom as a potential battleground of expectations and disappointments. But tonight, in this moment, I was exactly where I needed to be, standing firmly in my own truth, ready to embrace the life Howard had wished for me. Not just financially secure, but emotionally whole. The renovation team arrived early Monday morning, filling my quiet home with the sounds of measurement tools, discussion about load-bearing walls, and excited chatter about possibilities. Melissa Carter, the interior designer Melanie had recommended, walked through each room with me, notebook in hand, asking questions no one had ever bothered to ask before. "How do you use this space, Sarah? What feeling do you want when you walk through your front door? What colors make you happiest?" Found myself hesitating, searching for answers. "I'm not sure," I admitted. For so long, every decision was practical. What we could afford, what would last, what Emma needed. Melissa smiled, understanding in her eyes. "Then this is your opportunity to discover what Sarah needs." What brings you joy? Joy. Such a simple word, yet it felt foreign on my tongue. When was the last time I had made a decision based purely on what would bring me joy rather than what made practical sense? I love the morning light in the kitchen, I found myself saying. And I've always wanted a proper reading nook by the bay window in the living room. Something comfortable where I could sit for hours with a book. Melissa nodded, jotting notes. What about color? Any preferences? I thought about my wardrobe, practical neutrals, chosen to transition easily from work to Emma's school functions. Nothing distinctive, nothing that might stand out. Blue, I said suddenly, surprising myself. Deep blues and sea greens. Colors that remind me of the ocean. Perfect, Melissa replied. We'll create a coastal-inspired palette, calming, refreshing, with depth and character. Just like you, Sarah. Just like me. The phrase echoed in my mind as the team continued their assessment. Did I have depth and character beyond my role as Emma's mother? Beyond my position at Reynolds Financial? I was about to find out. After the design team left with promises of preliminary sketches by the end of the week, I sat in my kitchen, soon to be transformed from its dated 1990s aesthetic to something that reflected my emerging sense of self. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. We need to talk about the wedding budget. Can we meet tomorrow? No apology for her behavior at our last meeting. No acknowledgement of the hurtful things she had said. Just straight to business. The business of what I could provide. I took a deep breath and typed my response. I'm busy with appointments tomorrow. I can meet Thursday afternoon at the Copper Cup. Her reply came quickly. That's almost 3 days away. Mom, the wedding is in less than 3 months. We have deadlines with vendors. Once, that hint of urgency would have sent me scrambling to rearrange my schedule to put Emma's needs before my own. Not anymore. Thursday at 2 p.m. works for me. See you then. I set my phone aside and opened my laptop. If Emma wanted to discuss the wedding budget, I needed to be clear about my boundaries. I created a spreadsheet, something I was skilled at after years of managing Howard's complex financial schedules. I listed my planned contributions, reasonable, generous even, but not extravagant. Not the blank check Emma and Jason seemed to be expecting. My phone buzzed again, this time with a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Hello, Sarah Miller speaking. Sarah, it's Richard Taylor, Jason's father. I straightened in my chair, surprised. Judge Taylor, how can I help you? Please call me Richard. His tone was warmer than I remembered from our dinner. I was hoping we might meet for coffee tomorrow. There are some matters I'd like to discuss with you privately. My guard immediately went up. Had Jason sent his father to negotiate on his behalf? To use his position and authority to pressure me? What matters exactly? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. There was a slight pause. Family matters, specifically concerns about Emma and Jason's expectations regarding your recent inheritance. At least he was direct. I'm not sure what there is to discuss. My financial decisions are my own, Richard. Indeed they are, he agreed, surprising me. That's precisely why I'd like to speak with you. Not to pressure you, but to offer some perspective that might be helpful for all parties involved. Curiosity won out over caution. All right, I can meet you tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the Copper Cup on Main Street. Perfect. I'll see you then. After hanging up, I wondered if I had made a mistake. Richard Taylor was an intimidating man, a federal judge accustomed to controlling rooms and commanding respect. But something in his tone had seemed genuine, and I reminded myself that I was no longer the insecure single mother desperate for approval from Jason's affluent family. I was a woman of means in my own right, with the freedom to make my own choices. That evening, I did something I'd been putting off for days. I drove to Riverside Cemetery to visit Howard's grave. The late September air held a hint of autumn crispness as I placed a simple arrangement of white roses, his favorite, on the granite headstone. "I wish you could see what's happening, Howard," I said softly, feeling only slightly foolish for talking to a gravestone. "Everything's changing so quickly. I'm changing." A gentle breeze rustled the trees overhead, sending a shower of early turning leaves spiraling down around me. "Emma isn't taking it well," I continued. "I always thought I was raising her to be independent, compassionate, to value people over things. Somewhere along the way, I must have gone wrong. Or maybe Jason's influence has changed her more than I realized." I traced the engraved letters of Howard's name with my fingertip. "You always saw more in me than I saw in myself. You saw past the efficient assistant to the woman underneath. I'm trying to see her too, Howard. I'm trying to become her." I stayed until twilight began to settle over the cemetery, drawing comfort from the peaceful surroundings and the sense of connection to the man who had changed my life so profoundly. By the time I left, I felt more centered, more certain of the path I was choosing. The next morning, I arrived at the Copper Cup 15 minutes early, selecting a table in the corner where our conversation wouldn't be overheard. Richard Taylor arrived precisely at 10, dressed immaculately in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. "Sarah, thank you for meeting me," he said, extending his hand. His handshake was firm, but not overpowering. A calculated balance. He had likely perfected over decades on the bench. I gestured for him to sit. "I admit I'm curious about this meeting, Richard." He ordered a black coffee from the hovering server before turning his attention fully to me. "First, I want to apologize for how things unfolded at our dinner. Marian can be traditional in her expectations. And Jason has inherited some of her more unfortunate tendencies toward entitlement." This frank assessment from Jason's father caught me off guard. "I appreciate that," I said cautiously. Richard's coffee arrived, and he took a sip before continuing. "I understand Howard Reynolds left you a substantial inheritance." "News travels fast," I observed. "Jason mentioned it to Marian, who mentioned it to me," Richard explained, "along with their expectations about your contribution to their home purchase and wedding expenses." I tensed, preparing for the pressure I had anticipated. "As I've told Emma and Jason, my financial decisions are your own," Richard finished for me. "Absolutely correct, which is precisely what I told them." I blinked, surprised again. "You did?" Richard nodded, setting down his cup. "Sarah, I've been a judge for 32 years. I've seen what wealth, particularly unexpected wealth, can do to families. The entitlement, the resentment, the manipulation. It's rarely pretty." "That's been my experience so far," I admitted. "I imagine so." Richard's expression softened slightly. "My son has many fine qualities, but financial perspective isn't among them. He was raised in privilege and has never known anything different. Marian and I bear responsibility for that." I wasn't sure how to respond. This wasn't the conversation I had expected. Richard continued, his judicial demeanor giving his words additional weight. "Howard Reynolds was known to me by reputation. An astute businessman, an excellent judge of character. If he left you his estate, he must have had profound respect for you." "We worked closely for 15 years, I said. "He became a dear friend. Then he would want you to use this gift wisely, according to your own judgment, not according to the demands of others, even family." I studied Richard's face, looking for the catch, the pivot toward pressure. "Why are you telling me this?" He met my gaze directly. "Because someone needs to be the voice of reason here. Marian is caught up in wedding plans and social appearances. Jason has always conflated wealth with worth. And Emma." He hesitated. "And Emma?" I prompted. "Emma seems caught between the values you raised her with and the lifestyle Jason represents," Richard said diplomatically. I've watched her change over the 2 years they've been together. Not all of those changes strike me as improvements. The observation coming from Jason's own father brought a lump to my throat. So it wasn't just my imagination or maternal jealousy. Others had noticed the shift in Emma, too. What exactly are you suggesting, Richard? He leaned forward slightly. I'm suggesting that you hold firm to your boundaries, Sarah. Your inheritance is your own. Contribute to the wedding as you see fit, but don't allow yourself to be manipulated into bankrolling the excessive celebration Marion and Jason envision. Don't be pressured into financing their home purchase or anything else beyond what you genuinely want to give. I was genuinely confused now. Why would you, Jason's father, be advising me this way? Richard's expression turned reflective. Because I've lived long enough to know that giving people everything they want isn't doing them any favors. My son needs to learn to build his own success, not appropriate others. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm not entirely convinced that he and Emma are ready for marriage. This last admission hung in the air between us. I took a sip of my tea, processing his words. Have you expressed these concerns to Jason? I asked finally. Richard smiled wryly. I've tried, but a father's wisdom is rarely welcome when it contradicts a son's desires. Perhaps seeing you stand firm in your boundaries will accomplish what my words cannot. As our meeting concluded, Richard handed me his card with his private number written on the back. If you need any advice, legal or otherwise, please don't hesitate to call. And Sarah? Howard Reynolds made a wise choice in you. Trust your instincts. I drove home with my mind swirling, Richard's unexpected support giving me additional confidence in the path I was choosing. When I arrived, I found a sleek black BMW parked in my driveway. Jason leaned against it, scrolling through his phone with an air of impatient entitlement. Steeling myself, I parked and stepped out. Jason, this is unexpected. He straightened, slipping his phone into the pocket of his designer jacket. We need to talk, Sarah, about Emma. I unlocked my front door, debating whether to invite him in. Deciding that the conversation was better held on neutral territory, I gestured to the porch swing instead. What about Emma? Jason remained standing, his posture rigid. She's upset, crying constantly. The stress is affecting her sleep, her work performance, everything. This situation with you is ruining what should be the happiest time of her life. The accusation was calculated to trigger my maternal guilt, a tactic that had worked flawlessly in the past. I felt the familiar twinge but pushed it aside. I'm sorry Emma is upset, I said calmly, but characterizing her distress as a situation with me isn't accurate or helpful. Jason's practiced composure slipped slightly. She told me her mother, the woman who claimed to love her more than anything, is refusing to help with the wedding or our first home despite coming into millions. How would you describe that situation? I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I didn't need to justify my decisions to Jason or anyone else. I've offered to contribute reasonably to the wedding. I've never refused to help Emma. What I've refused is to be seen as an open checkbook rather than a person with my own needs and boundaries. Boundaries, Jason repeated with a dismissive snort. Emma is your only child, your only family. What exactly are you saving this money for if not for her future? Some self-indulgent renovations? Trips you could take any time? The condescension in his voice made something snap inside me. My renovations and travel plans are not self-indulgent, Jason. They're investments in a life I've put on hold for 25 years while raising Emma alone. And yes, she is my only child. A child I've already given everything to, long before Howard's inheritance. Jason's expression hardened. Maybe you should consider that your everything wasn't actually that impressive. A modest house in a middle-class neighborhood. State college instead of Ivy League. Emma had to work part-time throughout school. while her classmates could focus entirely on academics and networking. Each word was precisely aimed to devalue my decades of sacrifice. I felt heat rising in my face, not from shame, but from anger. "Yes, Emma worked part-time in college," I said evenly. "And that experience taught her responsibility, time management, and the value of earning her own way. Lessons that seem increasingly lost on her since she met you." Jason's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means that the Emma I raised understood the difference between needs and wants. She appreciated effort above ownership. She measured worth by character, not by price tags. I met," his gaze directly, "the Emma who stands by silently while you suggest I should be relegated to a retirement community at 58 so you can have my house. I barely recognize her." "People grow up, Sarah. They elevate their standards. Emma deserves the life I can provide, the connections, the opportunities, the status. And you deserve my house and my money to help provide it?" I asked pointedly. Jason's jaw tightened. "This isn't just about money. It's about family loyalty, about putting your daughter's happiness first, as you've claimed to do her entire life." The manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable. "Emma's happiness is important to me," I agreed. "But enabling entitlement isn't the same as supporting happiness." "And Jason? Family loyalty works both ways." He stared at me for a long moment, clearly unused to being challenged. Finally, he straightened his jacket with a sharp tug. "I can see this conversation is pointless. I'll tell Emma you're unwilling to reconsider." "Tell Emma I love her," I corrected him. "Tell her I'm available to talk directly anytime, without intermediaries. And tell her that my reasonable offer to contribute to the wedding still stands." Jason turned without another word, stalking back to his BMW and driving away with a deliberate screech of tires. Once the sound had faded, I sank onto the porch swing, emotionally drained but oddly exhilarated. I had stood my ground against Jason's manipulations without wavering, without the need to justify or explain myself beyond the simple truth of my boundaries. Howard would indeed have been proud. The next 2 days passed in a flurry of activity. Melissa returned with preliminary design boards that made my heart leap with excitement. Spaces transformed from functional to beautiful, from generic to distinctly mine. The kitchen would be opened to the living area, with custom cabinetry in a soft maritime blue. The master bathroom would become a spa-like retreat with a soaking tub positioned to catch the morning light. Throughout the house, coastal-inspired touches would create the serene, personal sanctuary I had never allowed myself to imagine. "It's perfect," I told Melissa, running my fingers over the fabric samples she had brought. "When can we start?" "We can begin demolition next week," she said, clearly pleased by my enthusiasm. "The whole project should take about 3 months, depending on material availability." 3 months, which meant construction would be underway during Emma's wedding. A coincidence that felt somehow appropriate, symbolic even. As Emma began her new life, I would be rebuilding mine. Thursday afternoon arrived, and with it, my scheduled meeting with Emma at the Copper Cup. I arrived a few minutes early, bringing copies of the budget spreadsheet I had prepared along with a check representing my contribution to the wedding. Generous, by normal standards, though certainly not the blank check she and Jason seemed to expect. Emma arrived 15 minutes late, looking harried and tense. She wore a crisp blazer I didn't recognize, something expensive and tailored, reminiscent of Marion Taylor's polished style rather than Emma's once casual approach to fashion. "Sorry I'm late," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. The wedding planner had a crisis with the florist. Apparently, the specific orchids Jason's mother wants are going to cost nearly double what we budgeted. I nodded, noting how quickly the conversation turned to money. "How are you, Emma? Beyond wedding planning?" She blinked, as though the question was unexpected. "Fine. Busy." Work is demanding right now, and there's so much to finalize for the wedding. She glanced around the cafe. Could we have chosen somewhere nicer to meet? Jason suggested Emerson's. I raised an eyebrow. I like the Copper Cup. The coffee is excellent, and I can actually hear you without shouting over ambient music. Emma made a non-committal sound, then leaned forward. Mom, we need to talk about the wedding budget. With your inheritance, there's an opportunity to really elevate the entire experience. The Carrington has a premium package that includes… Emma, I interrupted gently. Before we discuss that, I want to clear the air about our last conversation. Her expression immediately closed. I'd rather focus on practical matters right now. This is practical, I insisted. We can't move forward productively without addressing what happened. Emma sighed, a gesture of put-upon patience that reminded me uncomfortably of Marion. Fine. What about it? You accused me of being selfish for not immediately offering my inheritance to fund your wedding and house purchase. You suggested that I was jealous of your relationship with Jason and his family. Those accusations hurt me deeply. Emma shifted in her seat. I was upset. People say things when they're upset. Yes, they do, I agreed. But those words often reveal underlying assumptions. Do you actually believe I've spent 25 years sacrificing for you because I'm a selfish person? That after working multiple jobs to provide for you, I'm somehow jealous of your happiness? A flicker of something, guilt perhaps, crossed Emma's face. No, of course not. But Mom, circumstances have changed. You're not a struggling single mother anymore. You have millions. Wouldn't you want to share that abundance with your only daughter? I reached for my tea, buying a moment to organize my thoughts. Emma, when you were 12, do you remember what happened when Aunt Karen gave you $50 for your birthday? Emma frowned, clearly confused by the change in subject. Vaguely. It was a long time ago. You immediately divided it. $25 to save for the microscope you wanted, $15 for a donation to the animal shelter, and $10 for an ice cream outing with your friend Lily, whose family was struggling that year. I smiled at the memory. I was so proud of you. You understood even then that money was a tool to be used thoughtfully, in alignment with your values. That was different. I was a child. The principle remains valuable, I countered. Howard's gift to me is a tool, Emma. I'm using it in ways that align with my values. Creating a comfortable home where I can age in place, pursuing experiences I've deferred for decades, securing my financial future so I'll never be a burden to you. But what about my needs? Emma pressed. Do you need a premium package at the Carrington? Do you need a house in Hillcrest Estates as your first home? I asked gently. Or are those Jason's expectations, and perhaps Marion's, that you've adopted as your own? Emma's cheeks flushed. That's not fair. Jason wants to give me the best of everything. What's wrong with that? Nothing, if it's within your means as a couple. But expecting others to fund an inflated lifestyle, that's not the Emma I raised. I slid the check across the table. This is my contribution to your wedding. It's generous and given with love. Emma glanced at the amount, her expression falling. This is less than half of what we need for the Carrington package. It's 4 times what most parents contribute to their children's weddings, I pointed out. And it's what I'm comfortable giving. Emma pushed the check back toward me. We've already put deposits down based on what we thought you'd contribute. Jason's parents are handling the rehearsal dinner and honeymoon. The wedding is supposed to be your responsibility. The entitlement in her tone made my heart ache. Who told you that? When did we ever discuss such an arrangement? It's tradition, Emma insisted. The bride's family pays for the wedding. That tradition dates from a time when women were essentially transferred from one household to another, along with a dowry, I said dryly. Is that really the symbolic foundation you want for your marriage? Besides, you and Jason are both working professionals. Most couples today pay for their own weddings or accept what parents can comfortably contribute. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Whether from genuine emotion or tactical manipulation, I couldn't be sure anymore. Why are you doing this? Why now, when I need you most? I reached across the table, taking her hand despite her initial resistance. I'm not doing anything to you, Emma. I'm simply clarifying my boundaries. I love you. I want you to have a beautiful wedding. But I won't bankrupt my future or compromise my values to fund an extravaganza beyond reasonable means. She pulled her hand away. Jason says this is about control, that you can't stand to see me become part of his world because it reminds you of everything you couldn't provide. The word stung, but I recognized the source. Jason is wrong. This isn't about control or jealousy. It's about teaching you through example that your worth isn't determined by price tags or impressions. That true security comes from within, not from external validation or possessions. Emma stood abruptly, gathering her purse. Save the life lessons, Mom. I'm almost 30, not a child. If you won't help with the wedding we've planned, we'll figure it out ourselves. Emma, don't worry, you'll still get an invitation, she said, her voice brittle with hurt and anger. Though with your new boundaries, I won't be offended if you're too busy with your renovations to attend. She left without a backward glance, leaving me alone with an untouched check and a heart heavy with the growing distance between us. I had expected resistance, manipulation, even anger. But not this cold dismissal, this willingness to sever our connection over financial expectations. As I drove home, I wrestled with doubt for the first time since receiving Howard's inheritance. Was I being unreasonable? Should I simply write the check Emma wanted, secure her happiness even at the cost of enabling values I couldn't endorse? The questions followed me as I arrived home to find the preliminary construction permits waiting in my mailbox, tangible evidence of the new life I was building for myself. I stood in my driveway, permits in one hand, Emma's rejected check-in, the other, caught between the future I was claiming and the past I was struggling to release. My phone buzzed with a text from Melanie Hayes. How did the meeting with Emma go? I responded with simple honesty. Not well. She rejected my contribution as insufficient, accused me of withholding support when she needs me most. Melanie's reply came quickly. Remember what Howard always said? Tough choices make strong people. You're making the tough choice, Sarah. It's the right one, even when it hurts. Howard's words, echoed through Melanie, steadied me. I tucked the permits and check into my purse and walked up the path to my front door, the door to a home that would soon reflect the woman I was becoming, not just the mother I had been. Inside, I opened my laptop and made a decisive change to my renovation plans. The second bedroom, which I had been considering converting to a home office, would remain a bedroom, but updated, refreshed, ready for visitors, ready for the day when Emma might return, not as an entitled adult expecting financial support, but as a daughter seeking reconnection with her mother. That evening, I received an unexpected email from the Carrington Resort. The subject line read simply, "Wedding cancellation notice." Emma had canceled the venue. Whether from spite or genuine reconsideration of priorities, I couldn't know. But the finality of it sent a chill through me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about the fundamental nature of our relationship moving forward. I picked up my phone to call her, then set it down again. Pushing now would only entrench. Positions escalate emotions. Instead, I opened the travel brochure Diane had sent for our Italy trip, focusing on the beautiful photos of Tuscan hillsides and Venetian canals. 3 weeks exploring a country I had dreamed of visiting since college. Another deferred dream, now within reach. As I turned pages, a quote at the bottom of one caught my eye. The greatest gift you can give your children is not protection from change, challenge, or difficulty, but the confidence and tools to cope with and grow through them. I sat with those words for a long time, recognizing their wisdom and their application to my current situation with Emma. By maintaining my boundaries, by modeling self-respect and thoughtful financial decisions, I wasn't abandoning my daughter, I was giving her an opportunity to grow beyond entitlement into genuine maturity. Whether she would recognize that gift remained to be seen. But I had to trust the foundation I had built over 25 years of loving guidance. Somewhere beneath the influence of Jason and the allure of wealth, the Emma I had raised still existed. I had to believe she would find her way back to her authentic self, even if our relationship had to weather this painful storm first. The next morning, a certified letter arrived from a law firm I didn't recognize. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it, somehow knowing before I read a word that it was connected to Emma and Jason. The letter was brief, but devastating. Emma and Jason were formally requesting that I return the pearl necklace that had belonged to my grandmother, the one I had promised Emma she could wear on her wedding day as her something old. Their attorney characterized it as family property rightfully belonging to the next generation and demanded its immediate surrender. The pearls were not particularly valuable in monetary terms, but they were priceless to me sentimentally. My grandmother had worn them on her own wedding day, as had I. I had always planned to give them to Emma eventually, but as a gift, not as a possession to be claimed through legal intimidation. The nakedly aggressive tactic told me that Jason was now fully directing Emma's actions toward me. The daughter I knew would never have demanded the pearls this way, would have understood their emotional significance beyond their material value. I called Melanie immediately. "They're using attorneys now," I said when she answered. "For a family heirloom I already promised to Emma." Melanie's voice was calm but concerned. "This is escalation, Sarah. A power move designed to make you feel vulnerable and pressured." "It's working," I admitted. "Not because I'm intimidated by their attorney, but because I can't believe Emma would approach it this way. I feel like I'm losing her, Melanie." "You're not losing her," Melanie assured me. "You're both adjusting to a new dynamic. Emma has been accustomed to you yielding to her needs and wants. Now that you're standing firm in your own value, she's testing how far she can push. By using legal pressure over a necklace. By using whatever leverage she thinks might work," Melanie corrected. "Respond through an attorney. Be firm but dignified. Don't let emotion drive your decisions." After hanging up, I sat in my living room, holding the letter and feeling a complex mixture of hurt, disappointment, and resolve. The Emma I had raised was slipping further away, replaced by someone who viewed relationships as transactions and family heirlooms as assets to be claimed. Yet even in this painful moment, I found myself grateful for Howard's gift. Not just the financial freedom it provided, but the opportunity it had created for me to discover my own strength, to stand firm in my boundaries even when doing so, meant facing the loss of what I had always valued most, my relationship with my daughter. The battle lines had been drawn, and they cut straight through my heart. But I would not surrender my self-respect or my values, even for Emma. Especially for Emma, who needed to learn that true worth came from character, not acquisition. A lesson I had somehow failed to instill despite my best efforts over 25 years of motherhood. With renewed determination, I reached for my phone to call the attorney Melanie had recommended. Whatever came next, I would face it with dignity, clarity, and the quiet confidence Howard had always seen in me, even when I couldn't see it in myself. The demolition crew arrived at 7 in the morning, transforming my quiet home into a symphony of hammers, crowbars, and shouted instructions. I stood in the driveway clutching a travel mug of coffee, watching through the open front door as my dated kitchen cabinets were dismantled piece by piece. Each crack of splintering wood felt strangely cathartic, the physical manifestation of breaking down the old to make way for the new. "It always looks worse before it gets better," Melissa assured me, appearing at my side with her clipboard and encouraging smile. "By the end of the week, the demo will be complete, and we can start rebuilding." Are you staying with friends during construction? I nodded. Diane offered her guest room. I'm moving in temporarily this afternoon. Perfect. She glanced at her watch. I should check on the crew's progress. The plumber is scheduled for this afternoon to review the bathroom plans. As Melissa disappeared into the cloud of construction dust, my phone buzzed with a text. From Daniel Patterson, the attorney Melanie had recommended to handle Emma and Jason's legal demands. Letter drafted regarding the pearl necklace. Can you come by the office at 2 p.m. to review before we send? I texted my confirmation, then returned to packing the last of my personal items for my temporary relocation. The master bedroom and bathroom had been cleared the day before, but I'd left my clothes for last, carefully folding each item into suitcases spread across the living room floor. The pearl necklace in question sat in its velvet box on the coffee table. I opened it, running my fingers over the lustrous orbs that had witnessed 3 generations of weddings in my family. The pearls weren't particularly large or perfectly matched. They held more sentimental value than monetary worth. That Emma would resort to legal action to claim them broke my heart in ways the house and money conflicts hadn't. My doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. Through the glass panel, I could see a delivery person holding a large bouquet of flowers. I signed for the arrangement, an explosion of autumn blooms in rich oranges and deep reds, and searched for a card. Sarah, wishing you well with the renovations. A new chapter in a cherished home. Richard Taylor. I stared at the signature in surprise. Richard had been supportive during our coffee meeting, but sending flowers seemed an unusually warm gesture from Jason's reserved father. I placed the arrangement where it wouldn't be disturbed by construction and continued packing, making a mental note to send a thank you note. At 1:45, I arrived at Patterson Law Offices, located in a converted Victorian house near downtown Riverside. Daniel Patterson was nothing like I had expected from Melanie's recommendation. Instead of the aggressive litigator I had imagined, he was a soft-spoken man in his 60s with kind eyes and a thoughtful demeanor. The key in family disputes, he explained after greeting me, is to be firm without pouring gasoline on the fire, especially when you hope for eventual reconciliation. I do, I admitted. Despite everything, Emma is my only child. I want our relationship to heal, even if it takes time. Daniel nodded understandingly. Then let's proceed with clarity and dignity. I've drafted a response that establishes your position without unnecessary antagonism. He passed me a document, which I read carefully. The letter stated simply that the pearl necklace was my property, promised to Emma as a wedding gift, not an inheritance. It affirmed my intention to honor that promise when the time came, but firmly established that legal demands were inappropriate for family heirlooms freely offered out of love. The tone was clear but compassionate, setting boundaries, without burning bridges. It's perfect, I said, relieved. Exactly the balance I was hoping for. Good. Daniel made a few notes. I'll have this sent by courier today. Now, what about the broader situation? Melanie mentioned concerns about potential claims against your inheritance from Howard Reynolds. I sighed, explaining Emma and Jason's escalating attempts to access my newfound wealth, from emotional manipulation to their canceled wedding venue to the current legal pressure over the necklace. Daniel listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled thoughtfully. Based on what you've shared, I don't believe they have any legitimate claim to your inheritance. Howard Reynolds was clearly of sound mind, his will properly executed. The inheritance was left directly to you, not as a family asset. That's reassuring, I said. However, he continued, family disputes over inheritance can take unexpected turns. I'd recommend we take some preventative measures, documenting your ownership of assets, creating a clear estate plan of your own, perhaps establishing a trust for any portion you might eventually want Emma to inherit. The suggestion made practical sense, yet implementing it felt like acknowledging a painful reality, that my relationship with my daughter had devolved to the point where legal protections were necessary. Do you really think Emma would challenge my estate someday? I asked, the question catching in my throat. Daniel's expression softened. I think the Emma you raised probably wouldn't. But the Emma currently under Jason's influence? It's difficult to say. People change when significant. Money is involved, and when they're influenced by those with different values. I nodded, accepting the harsh truth of his assessment. Let's move forward with the protective measures then. But I want my estate plan to reflect my hope for reconciliation, not just my fear of conflict. We can absolutely achieve that balance, Daniel assured me. As I left his office, I felt a curious mixture of sadness and resolution. The legal precautions represented a failure in my relationship with Emma, yet taking them was an act of self-respect, an acknowledgement that I deserved. Protection even from those I loved most. Diane's guest room became my sanctuary over the next few weeks, as construction transformed my house and legal maneuvers reshaped my relationship with Emma. Daniel's letter regarding the pearl necklace received a swift response, not from Emma and Jason's attorney, but from Emma herself, in a text message that vibrated with hurt and anger. I can't believe you got a lawyer instead of just giving me Grandma's pearls. They're meant to be mine anyway. Just another example of how money has changed you. The irony of her accusation that money had changed me when it was her behavior that had transformed since learning of my inheritance wasn't lost on me. I drafted several responses before settling on simple truth. The pearls have always been intended for you, Emma. They will be yours on your wedding day, as promised. The lawyer was only necessary because you and Jason chose legal demands over simple conversation. I'm still here, ready to talk whenever you are. She didn't respond. October slipped into November, autumn colors giving way to bare branches and early frosts. My renovation progressed steadily, with Melissa sending daily photo updates that made my heart leap with anticipation. The kitchen was taking shape with custom cabinetry in that perfect maritime blue, complemented by creamy quartz countertops. The master bathroom transformation was equally dramatic. The dated fixtures replaced by a luxurious soaking tub and walk-in shower tiled in sea glass green. Each change to my home felt like a change in myself, a reclaiming of space, of identity, of the right to beauty and comfort after decades of practical compromise. Diane proved to be the perfect temporary housemate, respectful of my privacy, while offering companionship when I needed it. One evening, over a shared bottle of wine, I confided my ongoing struggle with Emma's estrangement. I keep wondering where I went wrong, I admitted. How did the thoughtful, compassionate daughter I raised become someone who values wealth and status over genuine connection? Who would use lawyers to demand family heirlooms? Diane swirled her wine thoughtfully. Maybe the question isn't where you went wrong, but where Jason's influence went too right. Emma spent her formative years absorbing your values, hard work, integrity, living within your means. But she spent the last 2 years immersed in Jason's world, where worth is measured in dollars and appearances matter above all else. So, you think it's entirely Jason's influence? I asked. Not entirely, Diane conceded. Emma's making her own choices, but sometimes when we've never had access to wealth or status, they can become seductive, especially when packaged with romantic love and social acceptance. The observation rang true. Emma had grown up watching me struggle financially, making sacrifices that her friends' dual-income families didn't have to make. Perhaps in Jason, she saw not just a partner, but a pathway to security and belonging that she had always craved. The question is, Diane continued gently, how long are you willing to wait for her to remember who she really is beneath all that influence? I stared into my wine glass, considering. As long as it takes. She's my daughter, but I won't compromise my self-respect in the meantime. Good, Diane smiled approvingly. Because the Sarah Miller I'm getting to know deserves that respect, from herself and everyone else. The following week brought an unexpected development. I received a formal invitation to Emma and Jason's wedding, rescheduled and relocated from the Carrington to the Westbrook Hotel, a venue significantly less grand, but still elegant. The date had been pushed back by 2 months, now set for February, rather than December. I traced the embossed lettering with my fingertip, uncertain how to interpret this shift. Was it a peace offering? A financial compromise? Or simply a practical adjustment after canceling the Carrington? That evening, my phone rang with a number I didn't immediately recognize. I answered cautiously. "Sarah, it's Marian Taylor." Nearly dropped the phone in surprise. Jason's mother was the last person I expected to hear from directly. "Marian, this is unexpected." "Yes, well." Her voice carried its usual crisp efficiency. "I'm calling about the wedding changes. I assume you received the new invitation?" "I did, just today." "Good." "The situation is this. After Emma canceled the Carrington, quite impulsively, I might add, we had to scramble for alternatives. The Westbrook was available for February, and while it's not my first choice, it will do." I waited, sensing there was more to this call than wedding logistics. Marian continued, her voice lowering slightly. "Richard and I have agreed to cover the majority of expenses, with Emma and Jason contributing what they can. Your participation is not expected, given the circumstances." The statement held both relief and insult. I was being officially excused from financial contribution while simultaneously being reminded that my refusal to fund their original plans had necessitated these changes. "I see," I said neutrally. "Thank you for letting me know." "There is one more thing," Marian added, a hint of reluctance entering her tone. "Emma is quite distressed about your grandmother's pearls. She had her heart set on wearing them." Ah, now we reached the true purpose of Marian's call. She was acting as intermediary in the pearl dispute. "The pearls have always been intended for Emma to wear on her wedding day," I confirmed. "That hasn't changed." There was a pause. "So you'll be returning them to her?" "I'll be bringing them to the wedding, as planned," I clarified. "They're a family heirloom meant to be worn and then preserved for the next generation. They're not a gift being transferred permanently before the wedding." Marian's disapproval traveled clearly through the phone line. "That seems unnecessarily complicated. Emma is your only child. They will be hers eventually." "Yes, they will. But family traditions matter, Marian. The pearls have been worn by the women in my family on their wedding days for 3 generations. I'd like to personally place them around Emma's neck on her wedding day, just as my mother did for me." Another pause, longer this time. "I'll convey your position to Emma." After hanging up, I leaned back in Diane's comfortable guest chair, conflicted. The wedding was proceeding, scaled back but still happening. I was invited, which suggested Emma didn't want a complete break in our relationship. But Marian's call had made it clear that tensions remained high, centered now on the symbolic passing of the pearl necklace. The next morning, I met with Daniel to update my estate plan as he had suggested. We created a simple trust that would eventually transfer assets to Emma, but with specific provisions to prevent Jason from controlling those assets in the event of Emma's incapacity or death. It wasn't that I expected the worst, but as Daniel gently reminded me, good legal planning always accounted for difficult possibilities. "What about the pearls?" Daniel asked as we finalized the documents. "Given the current dispute, we should be specific about their disposition." I considered carefully. "The pearls will go to Emma upon my death, with the same condition that has guided their passage through generations, that they be worn by family brides and preserved for future generations, not sold or altered." Daniel nodded approvingly. "A thoughtful provision that honors both the tradition and your daughter." As November progressed, my renovation neared completion. Melissa texted almost daily with updates and questions about finishing touches, the exact shade of blue for throw pillows, the specific nautical prints for the hallway gallery wall, the perfect bedding to complement the now serene guest room. Each decision, however small, felt significant. Another step toward creating a home that reflected the woman I was becoming, rather than just the mother I had been. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was psychological, emotional, spiritual. In choosing what pleased me, what reflected my aesthetic preferences, I was reclaiming parts of myself long subsumed by practical necessity and maternal sacrifice. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Melissa called with exciting news. We're ahead of schedule. If you're willing to live with a few minor finishing touches happening around you, you could move back in this weekend instead of waiting until mid-December. Really? I couldn't keep the excitement from my voice. That would, be wonderful. I've loved staying with Diane, but I'm eager to settle into my new space. Perfect. I'll have the cleaning crew do a thorough job on Friday, and you can move in Saturday morning. We'll just need to install the last of the light fixtures next week and touch up a few paint spots. I shared the news with Diane over dinner, feeling a bittersweet mix of excitement to return home and sadness to leave the companionship we'd developed during my stay. You'll have to come for dinner once I'm settled, I told her. See all the changes in person. I wouldn't miss it, Diane promised. Besides, we need to finalize our Italy plans. Only 4 months until we leave. The Italy trip had become a beacon on my horizon, something joyful to anticipate beyond the current difficulties with Emma. Diane and I had spent evenings researching destinations, planning our route from Rome to Florence to Venice, with side trips to smaller towns along the way. It would be my first international travel, my first true vacation in decades. Saturday morning dawned clear and cold, a perfect late November day for homecoming. Diane helped me load my suitcases into my car, hugging me tightly before I left. Remember, she said as we parted, your worth isn't defined by Emma's current perception of you. It never was. The wisdom of her words stayed with me as I drove the familiar route home, anticipation building with each mile. When I turned onto my street, I nearly gasped at the transformation visible even from the exterior. New landscaping framed the walkway, and the front door, now a vibrant teal, provided a welcoming pop of color against the house's refreshed neutral siding. Inside, the change was even more dramatic. Light poured through windows no longer obscured by heavy drapes. The opened floor plan between kitchen and living area created a sense of spaciousness and flow that the original compartmentalized rooms had lacked. Throughout the space, shades of blue, green, and sandy neutrals created a coastal-inspired haven that felt both sophisticated and serene. I moved slowly from room to room, trailing my fingers over new countertops, smooth woodwork, plush fabrics. In the master bathroom, I stood breathless before the soaking tub positioned beneath a window that framed bare tree branches against the November sky. Exactly as I had envisioned. The house no longer felt like the practical shelter where I had raised Emma. It felt like home, my home, designed for my comfort, reflecting my aesthetic, supporting the life I was choosing for myself after decades of putting others first. Melissa had left a bottle of champagne chilling in the new refrigerator, alongside a note. Congratulations on your new beginning, Sarah. May this space bring you joy for years to come. I placed the bottle aside for later and began the process of unpacking, of settling in, of making this transformed space truly mine. As I arranged my clothes in the custom-built closet, positioned books on new shelves, and placed treasured photos in updated frames, I felt a sense of rightness, of alignment with my authentic self that had been missing for too long. By evening, I had created enough order to feel comfortable, though boxes remained to be unpacked. Exhausted but content, I ran a bath in the new soaking tub, adding the luxurious bath oils Melissa had left as a housewarming gift. As I sank into the warm water, watching the last light of day fade through the window, I felt tears rise unexpectedly. They weren't tears of sadness exactly, nor purely of joy. They were tears of recognition, of seeing myself clearly, perhaps for the first time in decades, not just as Emma's mother or Howard's assistant, but as Sarah Miller, a woman of substance and worth, deserving of beauty, comfort, and respect. I allowed the tears to flow freely, understanding that they represented a necessary release, the letting go of a self-image built around sacrifice and service to make room for one that included legitimate self-regard. The following morning, I woke in my new bedroom, sunlight filtering through custom blinds to create patterns across the sea blue bedding. For a moment, I simply lay still, absorbing the peace of the space, the sense of having created something beautiful for myself without apology or justification. My tranquility was interrupted by a text notification. Emma's name appeared on my screen, sending a jolt of both hope and apprehension through me. "We need to talk about Thanksgiving. Jason, and I will be with his parents, but I could come by in the morning if you want." The offer was stilted, lacking warmth, but it represented the first direct communication from Emma in weeks, a small opening in the wall between us. I crafted my response carefully. "I'd love to see you on Thanksgiving morning. The renovation is complete, and I moved back in yesterday. You might not recognize the place." Her reply came quickly. "What time?" We settled on 10 a.m., and I spent the rest of the day alternating between unpacking and planning a small Thanksgiving morning spread. Nothing that would compete with the formal dinner at the Taylors', just coffee, pastries, and perhaps some fruit. As Thursday approached, I found myself increasingly nervous about Emma's visit. Would she appreciate the transformation of my home, or see it only as evidence of selfishness for not directing those funds toward her wedding and house? Would she come alone, or would Jason accompany her, bringing his judgmental presence into my newly created sanctuary? Thanksgiving morning arrived with a light dusting of snow, unusual for our area in November, but creating a postcard-perfect scene outside my new picture windows. I arranged fresh flowers on the dining table, set out the good china I seldom used, and prepared a selection of pastries from Emma's favorite bakery. At 9:58, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, smoothed my sweater, and opened the door to find Emma standing alone on my porch, bundled in a camel coat I didn't recognize, her expression guarded but curious. "Happy Thanksgiving," I said, stepping back to let her in. She hesitated at the threshold, eyes widening as she took in the transformed interior visible from the doorway. "Wow, you weren't kidding about the renovation." "Come in and see the rest," I invited, taking her coat as she entered. Emma moved through the open floor plan slowly, her gaze traveling from the kitchen's blue cabinetry to the living room's comfortable new seating arrangement, from the coastal art on the walls to the refinished hardwood floors beneath her feet. "It's beautiful," she admitted finally. "It doesn't even look like the same house." "That was rather the point," I said lightly. "Would you like coffee? I have those almond croissants you love from Belmont Bakery." She nodded, following me to the kitchen, where I poured coffee into new stoneware mugs glazed in shades of blue and green. As I arranged pastries on a platter, Emma leaned against the island, her fingers tracing patterns in the quartz countertop. "So this is where the money went," she said, her tone difficult to interpret. I set the platter down between us. "Some of it, yes. I've also established retirement accounts, made some investments, planned for future travel." "With Diane," Emma had. "I heard about your Italy trip from Jason's mother. Apparently his father mentioned it to her." The implied criticism was clear. I was traveling with a friend instead of helping my daughter. I chose not to engage with it directly. "Yes, in March. It's been a dream of mine since college." Emma selected a croissant, breaking off a piece, without eating it. "Must be nice to suddenly have all your dreams within reach." I sighed, recognizing the passive aggression but trying to move past it. "Emma, I didn't invite you here to argue about money. It's Thanksgiving. I'm grateful you came, and I'd like us to try to reconnect, even in a small way. She met my gaze finally, something vulnerable flickering beneath her defensive posture. The wedding plans are finalized. February 18th at the Westbrook. Jason's parents are covering most of it. I received the invitation, I said. It looks lovely. It's not the Carrington, she said with a hint of bitterness, but it will do. Emma, I said gently, the venue doesn't make the marriage. The commitment between you and Jason does. She looked away. That's easy to say when you're not the one compromising. Isn't that what marriage is, though? A series of compromises, negotiations, adjustments of expectations, learning to build something meaningful together within your actual resources, not just your wishes? The question hung between us, heavier than I had intended. Emma's expression shifted, something uncertain, entering her eyes. Jason had his heart set on the Carrington, she said, her voice smaller now. He says appearances matter in his profession, that connections are made at these events that can impact his career. I chose my next words with care, not wanting to criticize Jason directly, but needing to offer perspective. That may be true, but a wedding is one day. A marriage is a lifetime. The foundation matters more than the facade. Emma ate a bite of croissant, considering. The pearls, she said finally. Marion said you're insisting on bringing them to the wedding rather than giving them to me beforehand. It's the family tradition, I explained. They're worn by brides, then returned to keep safe for the next generation. I wore them at my wedding, and my mother placed them around my neck that morning, just as her mother did for her. I'd like to do the same for you. But they'll be mine eventually anyway, Emma persisted. Yes, they will. But tradition gives objects meaning beyond their material value, Emma. The moment of placing those pearls around your neck on your wedding day, that's part of what makes them special. She seemed to absorb this, her resistance softening slightly. I suppose that makes sense, if it's important to you. It is, I confirmed, relieved at this small concession. Almost as important as being part of your day, despite our recent difficulties. Emma glanced around the transformed space again, her expression thoughtful. The house really does look amazing. It suits you somehow. Thank you. That means a lot, coming from you. I should go, she said, checking her watch. Marion is expecting us by noon for appetizers before dinner. As I walked her to the door, I felt the weight of all that remained unresolved between us. Yet this visit, however brief and somewhat stilted, represented progress, a willingness to be in each other's presence, to acknowledge each other's realities without immediate conflict. At the threshold, Emma paused. Jason wanted me to ask again about help with a down payment. Now that you've finished the renovation, he thought maybe… Emma, I interrupted gently. Let's not go backward today. We've had a pleasant visit. Let's leave it at that for now. She flushed slightly but nodded. Right. Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart. I love you. She didn't return the sentiment, but she didn't reject it either. As I watched her drive away, I felt cautiously optimistic. The wall between us hadn't fallen, but perhaps a small window had opened, one through which we might eventually find our way back to authentic connection. I closed the door on the snowy morning and turned back to my beautifully renovated home, the tangible expression of my own worth, my own right to beauty and comfort. In choosing to honor myself after decades of self-sacrifice, I hadn't abandoned my love for Emma. I had simply expanded it to include myself as well. Howard's gift had made that expansion possible financially, but the emotional journey had been my own, a reclaiming of self-worth too long subordinated to others' needs and expectations. As I gathered the coffee mugs and remaining pastries, I felt a deep gratitude not just for the material comfort surrounding me, but for the internal transformation it represented. The path forward with Emma remained uncertain, complicated by Jason's influence and her own conflicted values. But I had found my footing, my center, my unwavering sense of my own worth. Whatever challenges lay ahead, wedding tensions, ongoing, financial expectations, the complex recalibration of our mother-daughter relationship, I would face them from a place of strength and self-respect. And for today, that was enough. December arrived with a flurry of holiday cards and party invitations, evidence of a social life I hadn't had time to cultivate while working 60-hour weeks at Reynolds Financial. Diane had introduced me to her book club, where I'd connected with several women my age who were similarly embracing this chapter of life. The renovation of my home had also sparked interest among neighbors who stopped by with housewarming gifts and curious glances at the transformation. For the first time in decades, I found myself looking forward to the holiday season rather than simply bracing for its financial and emotional demands. I decorated my new space with tasteful garlands and twinkling lights, purchased gifts thoughtfully, rather than stretching every dollar to its breaking point, and accepted invitations to gatherings I would once have declined due to exhaustion or budget constraints. I had invited Emma to Christmas Eve dinner, a tradition we had maintained even during her college years, but received a non-committal response about needing to coordinate with Jason's family plans. The disappointment stung, but I reminded myself that reconciliation was a process, not an event. Our Thanksgiving morning visit, however brief and somewhat strained, had been a start. 2 weeks before Christmas, I received an unexpected call from Marian Taylor. "Sarah," she began without preamble, "we need to discuss the rehearsal dinner for Emma and Jason's wedding." I felt immediately on alert. "What about it? I thought you and Richard were handling that." "We are," Marian confirmed, "but there seems to be some confusion about your role. The wedding planner has been asking questions about mother-of-the-bride traditions, and Emma has been evasive." I sighed, understanding the subtext. Emma was torn between traditional expectations that I would be centrally involved in wedding preparations and the current tension in our relationship. "What specifically do you need to know, Marian? Will you be hosting a bridesmaids' luncheon the day before? What about your speech at the reception? And Richard mentioned you have strong feelings about the family pearls. Will there be a formal presentation of those?" The barrage of questions carried Marian's characteristic efficiency, but also revealed genuine uncertainty about protocol given our strained circumstances. "I hadn't planned a bridesmaids' luncheon," I admitted. "Emma hasn't involved me in the wedding planning beyond our initial disagreements over financing." "I see." Marian's voice carried a hint of judgment, whether directed at me or Emma wasn't clear. "And your speech? Of course I'll prepare something appropriate if that's what Emma wants." "And the pearls? Emma mentioned they're quite important to your family tradition." I hesitated, uncertain whether this was a genuine inquiry or another attempt to pressure me into surrendering the pearls before the wedding day. "Yes, they are. I plan to present them to Emma the morning of the wedding, following our family tradition." Marian made a small sound that might have been acknowledgement or disapproval. "The wedding planner needs to know if this should be incorporated into the photography schedule, a special moment between mother and daughter." The question caught me off guard. I hadn't considered the possibility of documenting this private tradition, but the idea held appeal, preserving the continuation of a family ritual that had nearly been reduced to a legal dispute over property. "That would be lovely, if Emma agrees." "Good. I'll inform the planner." Marian paused, then added in a slightly warmer tone, "Sarah, may I speak frankly?" "Please do. This tension between you and Emma is creating complications beyond just your personal relationship. The wedding is a significant social event for both families. Jason's father is a federal judge with colleagues and connections attending. I'm on the board of 3 major charities with peers who will be present. Visible discord between the bride and her mother creates awkward questions and impressions." I bristled at the implication that my primary concern should be appearances rather than the authentic healing of my relationship with my daughter. "I understand your concern, Marian. But family relationships aren't performative events staged for social approval. Perhaps not in your circles, Marian replied coolly. But in ours, perception matters. All I'm suggesting is that we present a united front for Emma's sake, whatever private disagreements might exist. I considered her words, recognizing that beneath the focus on appearances lay a valid point. Emma's wedding day shouldn't be overshadowed by tension between us, regardless of its source. I agree the focus should be on Emma and Jason's celebration, I conceded. I have no intention of creating awkwardness or discomfort for anyone, especially Emma. Excellent. Then we're aligned on this matter. Marian's voice returned to its business-like efficiency. The wedding planner will contact you about the pearl presentation and your role in the ceremony and reception. I suggest you coordinate any outfit choices with the color scheme, navy blue and silver. After we disconnected, I sat in my reading nook, watching winter birds at the feeder outside the window while processing the conversation. Marian's concern with appearances rather than authentic relationship didn't surprise me, but her initiative in facilitating my involvement in the wedding did. Perhaps Richard had influenced her, or maybe she simply couldn't bear the social discomfort of explaining a mother's marginal role in her daughter's wedding to her peers. Whatever her motivation, the result was potentially positive. A structured way for Emma and me to navigate the wedding celebration despite our unresolved tensions. I made a mental note to shop for an appropriate dress in navy blue. The wedding planner, Vanessa, called the following day. A brisk, efficient woman whose voice matched the polished professionalism of her email signature. Mrs. Miller, I'm coordinating with all family members for Emma and Jason's wedding. I understand there's a special tradition involving a pearl necklace. I explained our family custom, the significance of the pearls being passed down through generations, worn by each bride, and then returned for safekeeping until the next wedding. That's lovely, Vanessa said, genuine warmth entering her professional. Toti, we should definitely capture that moment. What if we schedule 30 minutes before the ceremony? Just you, Emma, and the photographer in the bridal suite. That would be perfect, I agreed, if Emma is comfortable with it. She's approved the schedule, Vanessa assured me. Now, about your attire. The wedding palette is navy blue and silver. As mother of the bride, you might consider a sophisticated dress in navy with perhaps silver accessories. I confirmed I would coordinate appropriately, then answered her questions about my role in the ceremony. Emma had requested I light a memorial candle for her father, who had abandoned us but passed away several years prior. Reception seating. I would be at a family table near the bridal party, and whether I had any allergies or dietary restrictions the caterer should know about. The conversation left me cautiously optimistic. Emma had approved my participation in key aspects of the wedding, suggesting she valued my presence despite our ongoing differences. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was acknowledgement, a small bridge across the chasm that had opened between us. Christmas Eve arrived with a light snowfall that transformed the neighborhood into a scene from a holiday card. I had prepared for dinner regardless of Emma's non-committal response, setting my new dining table with festive china and crystal wine glasses I'd purchased as a gift to myself. At 4 o'clock, just as I was beginning to accept she wouldn't come, my doorbell rang. Emma stood on the porch, snowflakes catching in her hair, holding a small gift bag. "Merry Christmas," she said tentatively. "I can only stay a couple hours. We have an 8 o'clock reservation at Emerson's with Jason's family. I'm just happy you came," I said, stepping back to welcome her into the warmth of my home. "Dinner's almost ready." Emma handed me the gift bag. "This is from Jason and me." I opened it to find a silver-framed photograph of the two of them from their engagement shoot. Emma radiant in a cream sweater, Jason handsome and polished in camel cashmere. They looked like a magazine advertisement for affluent young love. "It's lovely," I said sincerely, though I couldn't help noticing it felt more like a formal gift one might give a distant relative than something personal between mother and daughter. "I have something for you too." I retrieved a small box from beneath my modest Christmas tree. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet with a single charm, a tiny seashell. "It's beautiful," Emma said, examining it closely. "The shell is from that beach in North Carolina we visited when you were 12, I explained. "Remember how you collected them every morning at sunrise? You said they were messages from the ocean." Emma's expression softened, a genuine smile, breaking through her careful composure. "I can't believe you remembered that. That was such a good trip." "One of my favorites," I agreed. "Just the two of us. That tiny rental cottage with the screened porch. And we ate ice cream for dinner that one night because it was too hot to cook," Emma added, the memory visibly warming her. I gestured toward the kitchen. "No ice cream tonight, but I made your favorite, beef Wellington with roasted vegetables, and chocolate souffle for dessert." Over dinner, the conversation remained carefully neutral. Wedding details that didn't touch on financial disputes, my renovation choices, her work projects. We avoided mention of Jason beyond his inclusion in the photo gift, and neither of us raised the still sensitive topics of my inheritance or their expectations regarding it. This cautious dance around difficult subjects wasn't the open-hearted, mother-daughter connection I longed for, but it allowed us to share a pleasant holiday meal without reopening wounds still in the process of healing. As Emma prepared to leave for her dinner with the Taylors, I felt a complicated mixture of gratitude for the time together and sadness at the careful distance that remained between us. "Thank you for dinner," she said, collecting her coat. "Everything was delicious." "Thank you for coming," I replied. "It meant a lot to me." Emma hesitated at the door, seeming to wrestle with something unspoken. Finally, she turned back. "The wedding planner said you agreed to the pearl presentation being photographed." "If that's what you want," I confirmed. "It's a special tradition. Having it documented seems appropriate." She nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about what you said, about tradition giving objects meaning beyond their material value. I think I understand that better now." The acknowledgement, however small, felt significant. A recognition that some things mattered beyond their monetary worth or legal ownership. "I'm glad," I said simply. "And I'm looking forward to being part of your day, Emma," she offered. A small smile. "Me too. Merry Christmas, Mom." "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." As January arrived, bringing with it final preparations for the February wedding, I found myself increasingly busy with my own expanding life. Diane and I had booked the last details for our Italy trip, scheduled for mid-March, a 3-week adventure through Rome, Florence, Venice, and the Tuscan countryside. My book club had evolved into a weekly dinner group where conversations ranged from literature to politics to the challenges of reinventing ourselves in our 50s and 60s. Through Melanie, I had connected with a financial advisor who helped me establish sensible investments that would secure my future while allowing me to enjoy the present. I had even begun volunteering 2 mornings a week at a women's shelter, offering budget counseling to those rebuilding their lives after difficult circumstances, work that felt meaningful and connected to my own experience of financial struggle as a single mother. Each of these developments represented a step away from the singular focus on Emma that had defined my adult life. I was becoming someone more complex, more independent, with relationships and interests that existed separately from my identity as Emma's mother. The transformation wasn't about loving her less, but about expanding my capacity to love myself as well. 3 weeks before the wedding, Emma called with an unexpected request. "Mom, would you go dress shopping with me this weekend? I need to find something for the rehearsal dinner and—" She hesitated. "I could use your eye for what looks good on me." The invitation sent a surge of hope through me. This wasn't a practical request or an obligation, but a genuine desire for my companionship and opinion. "I'd love to," I said immediately. "Saturday afternoon?" We arranged to meet at Riverside Mall, a mid-range shopping center with stores that bridged the gap between the department stores I had frequented and the high-end boutiques Emma had begun, exploring since her engagement to Jason. Saturday arrived bright and cold, one of those crystalline winter days where sunlight bounces off snow with almost blinding brilliance. I arrived early, securing a table at the coffee shop near our meeting point and ordering Emma's favorite caramel latte alongside my simple tea. She appeared precisely on time, unwinding a cashmere scarf as she spotted me. "You remembered my coffee order," she said, sitting across from me. "Some things don't change," I smiled. "How are the final wedding preparations going?" Emma sighed, revealing the first crack in her carefully maintained composure. "Overwhelming, honestly. Marion has opinions about everything, and Jason says we need to consider them because his parents are covering most of the costs now." I nodded sympathetically, careful not to say anything that might be construed as criticism of the Taylors. It can be difficult balancing everyone's expectations while trying to create a day that feels authentic to you and Jason. "Authentic," Emma repeated, a wry smile playing at her lips. "I'm not sure how much of this wedding is actually authentic to who Jason and I are versus who his parents expect us to be." The observation surprised me. The first hint that Emma might be developing her own questions about the values she'd seemingly embraced so wholeheartedly with Jason. "What would your authentic wedding look like?" I asked gently. "If you could design it without considering anyone else's expectations." Emma stirred her latte thoughtfully. "Smaller, more intimate. Maybe outdoors somewhere beautiful rather than in a hotel ballroom. Less about impressing people and more about celebrating with those who truly know us." She shook her head slightly. "But that's not realistic. Jason's career depends on connections, impressions, being seen in the right circles." "Does it?" I asked, keeping my tone curious rather than challenging. "Or is that what he's been taught to believe?" Emma glanced up sharply, defensive. "You don't understand his world, Mom." "You're right," I conceded. "I don't. But I do understand the difference between choices made from authentic values versus those made from fear or external pressure. It's something I've been learning myself these past months." Emma's expression softened slightly. "Through your renovation, your trip planning, your new friends." "Yes. Through remembering who I am beyond the roles I've played, employee, mother, provider." We finished our drinks in companionable silence, each absorbing the subtle shift in our conversation toward something more honest than we'd managed in months. As we shopped, moving from store to store in search of the perfect rehearsal dinner dress, that openness continued. Emma seeking my genuine opinion, me offering thoughtful suggestions without pressure or judgment. In the dressing room of a boutique neither of us had visited before, Emma tried on a midnight blue sheath dress with a delicate silver beaded pattern along the neckline. When she emerged, the effect was stunning, sophisticated yet youthful, elegant without being ostentatious. "What do you think?" she asked, turning before the three-way mirror. "It's perfect," I said honestly. "Truly perfect for you." Emma studied her reflection, smoothing the fabric over her hips. "It's not what Marion would choose. She prefers more traditional styles, fuller skirts, conservative necklines." "But it's your rehearsal dinner," I pointed out, "not hers." Emma met my gaze in the mirror, something resolute entering her expression. "You're right. It is." She turned to face me directly. "I'm buying this one." The decision felt symbolic somehow, a small assertion of her own taste over Marion's influence. As we left the boutique with the dress carefully boxed, Emma turned to me with unexpected vulnerability in her eyes. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, anything." "Are you happy? With your life now, I mean. The house, your plans, your new independence." The question caught me off guard with its directness, its genuine curiosity about my inner experience rather than just my external choices. "Yes," I answered truthfully. Not without complications or occasional loneliness, but fundamentally, yes. I'm learning who I am beyond the roles that defined me for so long. It's both terrifying and exhilarating. Emma nodded slowly, absorbing this. I'm beginning to understand why that matters so much to you. Why you couldn't just give in to what Jason and I wanted regarding your inheritance. The acknowledgement, however tentative, felt monumental. The first real recognition that my boundaries had been reasonable, perhaps even necessary. Thank you for saying that, I said, emotion making my voice slightly unsteady. It means more than you know. We parted with a genuine hug, rather than the awkward half-embrace that had characterized our recent interactions. As I drove home, I felt cautiously hopeful that we might be finding our way toward a new relationship, one based on mutual respect between adults rather than the increasingly dysfunctional dynamic that had developed since my inheritance and her engagement. The week before the wedding brought a flurry of last-minute details and changes. Vanessa called with updates to the schedule, questions about family dynamics the photographer should be aware of, confirmation that I would be seated at table 2, near the bridal party, but not at the head table itself. Each adjustment reflected the complex reality of our situation. I was Emma's mother, an essential part of the celebration, yet our relationship remained in a delicate state of repair. I accepted these arrangements with grace, focusing on what mattered most, being present for Emma on her wedding day in whatever capacity she needed. 2 days before the wedding, I received an unexpected visitor. I opened my door to find Richard Taylor standing on my porch, his tall figure somehow less intimidating than I remembered from our first encounters. Sarah, he greeted me with a warm handshake. I hope I'm not intruding. I was in the neighborhood and thought I might stop by briefly. I invited him in, curious about this unusual visit. Richard had been supportive during our coffee meeting months earlier, but we hadn't spoken directly since then. Your home is lovely, he observed, glancing around at my renovated space. Marion mentioned you had made some changes, but this is quite remarkable. Very much a reflection of you, I think. Thank you, I said, gesturing for him to take a seat in the living area. That was very much the intention. Would you like some coffee or tea? No, thank you. This won't be a long visit. Richard settled into an armchair, his expression growing more serious. I wanted to speak with you privately before the wedding, about Emma and Jason. My guard immediately went up. What about them? Richard sighed, looking suddenly older, more vulnerable than his usual composed self. I have concerns about their relationship. Concerns I haven't been able to express effectively to Jason. I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. My son is not always the man I had hoped he would become, Richard said carefully. Marion and I bear responsibility for that. We provided abundantly but perhaps didn't emphasize the right values along the way. The candid admission surprised me. Why are you telling me this now, Richard? The wedding is in 2 days. He met my gaze directly. Because I've watched Emma change since she's been with Jason, the young woman you raised, with solid values and genuine compassion. She's been subsumed by something else. By Jason's focus on status, appearance, material markers of success. I couldn't disagree with his assessment, but hearing it from Jason's father was unexpected. Again, why tell me this now? Because I believe you're the only one who might be able to help Emma find her way back to herself, Richard said simply. Not by stopping the wedding. It's far too late for that. But by remaining a steady presence in her life afterward, a reminder of the values that shaped her before she met Jason. The responsibility he was placing on my shoulders felt heavy, yet somehow affirming, an acknowledgement that my influence on Emma had value beyond what I could provide financially. I've been trying to maintain that connection, I said carefully. Despite our disagreements, Richard nodded. I know. I've observed your patience, your refusal to escalate conflicts, your consistent availability despite provocations. It's been instructive. I raised an eyebrow, uncertain how to interpret this comment. Marion and I haven't always approached family disagreements with such grace, he clarified with a self-deprecating smile. We tend toward ultimatums and power moves rather than patient endurance. Different approaches for different situations, I offered diplomatically. Richard stood, preparing to leave. Perhaps. But I wanted you to know that I see the careful path you're walking with Emma, and I believe that in time, she will recognize its value as well. He extended his hand. I look forward to seeing you at the wedding, Sarah, and perhaps beyond it as well. As I closed the door behind him, I felt oddly encouraged by this unexpected alliance. Richard Taylor and I came from different worlds, approached life from different perspectives, yet we shared a common concern for Emma's authentic well-being beyond material success or social status. The day before the wedding arrived with final confirmations and adjustments. I packed an overnight bag for the hotel where the wedding would take place, including a carefully wrapped box containing my grandmother's pearls. I had them professionally, cleaned and the clasp reinforced, practical preparations that doubled as acts of love and care for the tradition they represented. My navy blue dress, selected to coordinate with the wedding palette, hung ready in its garment bag. My hair appointment was confirmed for early morning. The speech I had written for the reception had been rehearsed until I could deliver it with genuine emotion, without risking tears that might disrupt the carefully orchestrated celebration. Everything was prepared for Emma's wedding day. A day that would mark not just her union with Jason, but also, I hoped, another step in the healing of our relationship. Whatever came after, whatever challenges their marriage might face, whatever continued evolution my life might undergo, I would face it with the quiet strength I had discovered within myself these past months. Howard's gift had given me financial security, yes. But the true inheritance had been the opportunity to reclaim myself, to remember that I was worthy of beauty, comfort, respect, and love, not because of what I provided to others, but simply because of who I was. That knowledge would sustain me through whatever joys and sorrows tomorrow might bring. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.